Purple Robe here, and I've got a treat for you today. This is the first chapter of a novel I wrote a while ago called The Shadow of Shub-Niggurath, and if that name sounds familiar to you, it's because Shub-Niggurath was one of the old gods created by H.P. Lovecraft in his Cthulhu series. Yes, this is a Cthulhu story that takes place in Nazi-occupied Paris in the 40s in World War II. Yeah, I know. So I'm just going to shut up so you can get to the story, because I know you're going to love it.
There was a letter on the desk for Joseph when he arrived at work that day. Receiving mail was always a special occurrence. There was something nostalgic about it. He recalled fondly the days of his youth, when he wrote letters to his cousins in Munich. Later, posting love notes was a cherished act of his adolescence. He still had a bundle of messages he'd gotten from various women tied in a silken ribbon, obtained from one of the girls, and kept in an old hat box somewhere in the attic of his house. Every once in a blue moon he would go through a few, usually laughing at the sentiments with his wife, who had herself contributed to the collection. This one was from Dr. Braun in Paris. Alas, not from his wife. Still, it was wonderful, thought Joseph, without the slightest hint of sarcasm, getting a business letter. No reason not to want to read and write correspondence about work. He loved his job. Being a doctor, helping people. He normally worked with children, and they were the favorite of all his patients. He tore through the envelope with his thumb and unfolded the paper from within. Zygmunt Braun was keeping himself busy in France. His work was progressing smoothly. Great news, thought Joseph pleasantly. When their joint mission was complete, it would change the world. Joseph had much work to do on his end. He was studying twins for Braun and was making excellent headway. He couldn't wait to inform his friend of the latest batch of test results. It was dizygotic, or fraternal twins, that were dangerous. Braun was to use no fraternal twins. Joseph put the letter on his desk and glanced to the photo of his wife Irene. Goodness, how he missed her. He was anxiously expecting a note from her any day with the photograph he so dearly desired. He'd been informed by a phone call from his father that she had given birth to a boy. Joseph was a daddy. They had decided on Rolf if it was a boy, or Dorit for a girl. Secretly, as many fathers do, he did wish for a little boy. He and Irene both wanted 3 children, and Joseph felt very strongly that the eldest should be male. He would be able to look after his younger siblings in a way that a daughter could not. Joseph was the first of 4 children in his own family, and had acquired a protectiveness for his brothers and sister that he expected Rolf to obtain someday. A photograph of mother and child was promised to be sent to him, and he could barely control his anticipation of it. There was a knock at the door, and the nurse informed him that his subjects were ready for him in the observation room. Joseph thanked her and stood up, whistling a popular show tune of the day. He'd only just arrived to work, and still needed to switch his jacket for his lab coat. He donned the cover, washed his hands, and, still whistling, left his office for the observation room. He walked in and couldn't keep the smile from his lips. These 2 were adorable. There was something about red-headed children, thought Joseph. The little boy and little girl stood naked in the center of the room. Thought Joseph, it was very cold in this part of the country at this time of the year. He would try to complete his tests quickly and get these 2 back to their quarters and into some clothes. Joseph sat down in the chair that was set out for him and introduced himself to the twins. He specialized in monozygotic twins and knew there was so much to be learned from researching them. He believed he could unlock the human genetic code given enough time and enough identical twins. However, the chief medical officer of the facility, Dr. Worths, instructed him that he was needed on this important project, and Joseph didn't mind so much, even before he became familiar with its subject matter. After a few questions, which the kids answered rather perfunctorily, he decided to begin the physical part of the exam. As he walked up to the 2 6-year-olds, they held hands, and as he got within arm's reach, they hugged each other tightly, turning their faces as one to him. Joseph had to pause. He had a camera specifically for such occasions in his office, but he had forgotten to bring it today, as his mind was on the response he was to be writing to Dr. Braun later. Ah, well. He would retain a mental photo of the 2 locked in each other's arms, their wavy red hair touching at the forehead and flowing into one. He put a thumb on each of their chins and smiled again. His heart was light. He had a new son. He loved his work, which was important and satisfying, and he was already savoring the experience of the letter he was to write. He must inform Zygmunt that regrettably Dr. de Vigan had not held up well during the testing process and had passed away. Though it was unfortunate, there was a lot to discover in the dissection process. The vegan was truly a unique specimen. Joseph glanced again at the twins before him. He took hold of the little girl's arm. Her name was Hannah, according to the chart. She refused to give it up, and instead kept a firm grip on her brother. Joseph dug into the pocket of his lab coat and came out with a piece of hard toffee. He held it out to Hannah, whose eyes widened. He took in the very slight ulcerations around her mouth, and his smile wavered, probably the onset of cancrum oris, which is often caused by malnutrition. He gave specific instructions for his patients to be better fed than others. Hannah, obviously hungry, released her brother to accept the proffered sweet. As she stuffed it into her mouth, he took her free hand and led her to the gurney set up nearby. He lifted her onto it in a sitting position and then returned for the boy-child. His name, he discovered, consulting the same chart, was Goran. Joseph handed Goran a similar piece of candy. He always kept his pockets full of snacks. It helped so much when dealing with youngsters. He felt chocolate worked best, but of course, it was the hardest to come by these days. "Is there anything I can get for you, Doctor?" The nurse had reappeared at the door. "Some chloroform and syringes, please," said Joseph. It was normally a good idea to put both children out when working on them. As he preferred to work alone, there wouldn't be a nurse present to prevent stray kicks and scratches that sometimes happened in the course of his tests. He and the nurse spoke German on purpose so that the kids wouldn't be able to understand, though some of these Poles picked up words and phrases here and there. If these two understood, they didn't show it. "Yes, Dr. Mengele," said the nurse before she vanished from the room to perform her duties. Joseph Mengele began whistling again. Both the boy and the girl gazed at him enrapt. After a moment, Goran started whistling the same tune, making it a chorus and eliciting an even wider smile from Joseph. The happiness he exuded spread around the room, as now Hannah, still sucking on her candy, began to smile as well. Yes, thought Joseph, these were just adorable children. He couldn't wait to dissect their prepubescent genitals and compare them to the last set of twins he'd experimented on. But alas, that wasn't scheduled for another few days at least. So that was Chapter 1 of The Shadow of Shub-Niggurath, if you liked it. There are 5 chapters here on YouTube, and the rest are on Patreon, if you want to go to my Patreon page and check it out. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you on Chapter 2.